Sally Guidance. Thank you again for having this. I have a ninth grader and a very nervous seventh grader. And I have two questions. One, and I know you mentioned educating or intertwining some sort of education throughout concerning mental health. What are we doing to equip or educate our students to kind of be sensitive when something doesn't seem quite right in someone in their peer group, maybe extended just observation? What are we doing to give them the confidence to maybe mention it to an adult or whatever the next step should be? Second question, has there been any conversation about metal detectors in our schools?
I'll work backwards because I'm going to give Mr. Wilson the first question, but I can handle the second question about metal detectors. And I'm going to go back to the security risk assessment because, you know, again, and that's not off the table. It's certainly not off the table, but whatever we do, we want to do right. And that was a conversation that we had most recently with the board. Whatever we choose to do, we want to do right. We want to do with the expertise of folks from the industry. So hence the security risk assessment. That's where that came from, the holistic look at not only our facilities, but our technology and our procedures. And if at the end of that assessment, a recommendation is to, you know, have metal detecting wands or metal detecting devices at certain doors or what have you, well then so be it. That's a commitment that you make when you do an assessment, right? A commitment you make when you do an assessment is to respond to the recommendations. So, you know, that's not gonna happen overnight, but it's certainly something we're gonna work on during the spring. And in our budget, we have set aside capital reserve money near $1 million, $750,000 to help us to address some of those items when we learn about those items. So they're unidentified funds being brought into the budget from a reserve account during budget season, which is now, for whatever those recommendations may be. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you. Ms. Wilson, the first question.
Okay. So I can't overstress the importance of building relationships between teachers and students, and administrators and students, and our staff and students. We do an awful lot to build those relationships so that students trust that if there's an issue, they can go to some adult who will address that issue. In fact, many of the there are many instances throughout the course of the day where students will say, you know what, this is going on. They'll tell a staff person who then responds to that, and we're able to address it. We have in our middle school currently and in our high school, we have resource officers as well as our safety officers. And the relationship they have fostered with our students is invaluable because students feel comfortable going to them at both schools to say, you know, this is going on, or I have this concern, or you know what, I don't know what to do about this situation. That happens an awful lot. So I think, you know, I don't know that there's any easy answer, but I think the part of the solution is in building those very positive relationships between our adults and our students. And I know, you wanted to comment.
Hi, I'm Valerie Dorothy. I'm the student assistance coordinator here at the middle school and for the elementary schools. And every year, in addition to providing our assemblies and programs for the Week of Respect, we're continuously working with our students not only about anti-bullying, but they all know that everyone is responsible for themselves and whatever they see with someone else. And we have a number of students who come to us on a daily basis in the counseling office and share concerns they have about friends or people they see in the hallway or someone who's done something. So it doesn't just happen at the end when it's a crisis. We find that students come to us throughout the school year, even for smaller situations that they have concerns about. And like I said, through the curriculum and through, you know, continuous kind of programs, they learn that they should be responsible for not only themselves, but to be aware of their surroundings. And you know, if you see something, say something.
And I'll just add one more thing to that. You know, some of the Somerset County districts are looking at anonymous tip lines as well. Stop It is one of the programs. That's a school-based type of program. I'm going to give the microphone to Chief Grammer in a minute because I know in the county, I know at the local police department level, there already is one, but at the school level, we're investigating some of those products as well. It's just, you know, that does take some time, although that would be a nice vehicle for students who may not be as comfortable to report to a principal, a vice principal, or even a teacher. But the teacher-student relationship is important, as Mr. Wilson said. But, Rich?
So our kids have grown up in the post 9/11 world, and what's been on all the PSAs, if you see something, say something. They've grown up with that. They know that, and they do. They tell us stuff all the time. We get it on our tips line, which is 873-PASS, for pass it along, and we'll also just get straight up phone calls, or they'll flag us down and say something, or they'll grab the school resource officer, and when we get tips, we immediately, you know, jump on an investigation to see what the story is. Sometimes it turns out to be nothing, as is the case many times. It's social media. Somebody posted something that is questionable on social media. Their peers dime them out right away. If you see something, say something. That's the world they've grown up in, and that's exactly what they do.
Thanks.